The glamours of the touring life.
Yes, it's very glamorous.
Behind the music.
My other life, I'm a ER physician. I work at Cedars-Sinai in LA.
So we have given ourselves a lot of work over the next 13 months. And it's very exciting and very fun.
All of you are based in California, and I'm here in Washington, so we're all on the West Coast. And so a lot of our timelines have been similar during the pandemic in terms of when things shut down. And before we get started, I want to thank you again for being my segment sponsor. So cheers to you. I'll do a little virtual cheers here.
Virtual
Clink.
cheers. Clink.
Hey!
What the?
Here we all are. How are all of you doing? Thank you so much for being here. This is awesome.
I'm happy to be a part of the legacy you're building with Eclectic Arts.
Same. Genuine pleasure. Again, thank you so much for not sucking at all. So,
everyone, please support Mark. I love what you're doing. I love that you spend time on top of a full-time regular job doing this and helping artists like me share what we do, get our work out into the world. Your media coverage, I mean, the testimonials you wrote about American Birthright are the ones that we share with press, because your words and just how much you care, how much you listen. I mean, look at this background and look at the little blurb you did in the beginning and you just put so much effort and care into what you do, and it really shows. And I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be a friend and a co-creator on this piece, but thank you so much for having me and for keeping me in your circle, and I'm excited to be back. Thank you so much.
I know we're from Alabama, but we do read a couple books now and again. We've been known to read.
Scott figured it out.
Scott, once again.
Saves the day.
No Twitcher left behind.
No Twitcher left behind.
Well, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
Hello.
First and foremost, happy birthday, Mom!
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. And happy birthday to Alex out there as well, since we share the same birthday.
Happy birthday, Alex. Yeah, you guys have the same exact birthday, don't you?
We do, yeah. We share it with Tupac.
Well, I guess everybody's got birthday.
So we have a list of questions for you, Mark. I don't know if you want to talk about anything before that.
Well, we did
just by
discuss
way of
correctly.
introduction, for people who haven't seen this
Yeah.
before, we did some virtual tour stuff. During the pandemic, we had all these tours and shows lined up, and obviously we couldn't go out on tour. So we did it, we built the studio here, and we did a bunch of live performances. And Mark Sugiyama, who's here with us today, joined us for every single one of those performances, every single day. He has an amazing show of his own. His show is Eclectic Arts, and he interviews people from all walks of life, of all artists, basically. I mean, visual artists, musicians, bands, everything. We'll get more into it, Mark, but one of the most amazing interviewers we have ever encountered. You did one of the most amazing, when we first met you up in Seattle, one of the most amazing pieces we've ever, experienced as a band. So we're eternally grateful to you, and we are stoked to hear a little bit more about you today. Yeah.
Yes, we're flipping the pancake here. We're going to be asking Mark the question.
Flip the pancake.
Flip the pancake.
All right. So just to get things started, at the beginning, I think is a good place to get going. So we know that you're based in Seattle, but is that where you were actually born and raised?
Yeah, so I was born in Seattle. My parents were already having a home built out in a suburb called Kirkland when my mom was pregnant with me. So to me, I was born in Seattle, but I consider Kirkland my hometown because I was there for like 27 years. And for people out there that aren't familiar with Kirkland, unfortunately, we kind of became front and center back in January of 2020 because of the COVID outbreak was happening in Kirkland at the senior care facility. So that was not too far from where I grew up, and from in terms of my parents' house, which they still live in to this day. And then when I was doing the virtual tour in it's so weird to talk about this stuff from 2 years ago. I was living in Edmonds, Washington, which is north of Seattle, about 30 minutes. And then in October of last year, I moved to Canmore, which is maybe, I don't know, like 20 minutes away from Seattle. So I am a native of Washington, I guess you could say, but not necessarily a native of Seattle.
Awesome.
Thank you. We can't wait to see you in person.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be such an amazing reunion on July 1st. I can't wait. It's been 5 years.
Second Isthmus Fest.
5 years since we
That's
seen you in
crazy.
person. That is one.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
Whoa,
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So how did you get started with your interviews? Like, I know that you've done all sorts of pieces and then you kind of molded into the show that you have now. How did you first start out?
Oh, wow. So I started Eclectic Arts in 2011 purely as a fan and not even as an idea. I was exchanging emails with a singer from a band from the Czech Republic who had come back after 10 years of saying, we're done with this as an underground black metal band. We're done with the scene. We're not going to do any more, songs or albums or tours, and basically F you, and just wanted to kind of disappear into the mist. And then I saw they had an album come out in 2010. And I'm kind of like, oh, that must be like a compilation album or B-sides or live tracks or something. And no, it's a brand new studio album. So I'm like, I think I still have his email. So I sent him an email. Sure enough, he got back to me, remembered our kind of discussions we used to have back in the day. And we're going back and forth for, I don't know, several days, maybe even several weeks. And I thought, I bet you some other fans would like to read this. And at that time, I mean, I had no idea, like, where am I going to put this? I wasn't into like blogs, which is funny since that's where all my stuff is now. But I thought, well, I should try to put it out there and let other people read it. And some of the other people in the underground metal scene, I sent it to them to kind of get their feedback on it. I said, Mark, this is so awesome. You got to do more of this kind of thing. And so I started reaching out to people that I knew purely as a fan. I'm not a journalist. I don't have a degree in journalism or communications or anything like that. And so lo and behold, a lot of the labels, distributors, other artists that I knew from different genres of music, not just metal, were like, yeah, Mark, we'll do this. We'll do like an email interview with you or a phone interview. And I didn't even know how to do a phone interview back then. So it got very real to me of like, well, either I'm going to need to do this or just kind of go away. So I decided to pursue it. And I had just seen a wonderful singer-songwriter named Vienna Tang at Bumbershoot, which is a huge Labor Day music festival here. And so me being the way I'm wired, I don't really know why I'm wired this way, but I'm like, gosh, if I could interview anybody right now for this fanzine thing that I'm going to try to do, who would I want to pick? I wanted to interview her. And so I tried to find her people, so to speak. Didn't hear anything, which was very common back then for me. It's still kind of common today, unfortunately. So I kind of gave up on her, honestly, and was working on some other people that were getting back to me. And then I want to say it was around January or February of 2011, her manager got a hold of me. I said, Mark, I'm so sorry, we were getting your emails, and Vienna definitely wants to do the interview with you if you can do a phone interview. And up to that point, I'd never done one. So I'm kind of like, yeah, absolutely. I'm totally in. Let's do this. And found a day and a time. And turns out she was based in Detroit at the time. So I had to figure out the time zone difference thing and how am I going to record the phone conversation? Because this is kind of smartphone stuff, or at least nice smartphones that we have now. So I can kind of mention the stories that I think too much, maybe it's being a Gemini or something. So I always over prepare for everything that I do. And in that particular case, it actually paid off for me because I thought the interview was going to be 9 o'clock my time in Seattle. And so I was already up like at 7 and getting all my stuff together and triple checking my questions and everything else. And then the phone rang at 8. And I'm looking at that and I'm kind of like, well, that says Detroit on it. So who else do I know in Detroit? But I'm like, she's an hour early. But picked it up. Sure enough, it was Vienna. And we had an amazing conversation for like an hour. But had I not overly prepared, I would have missed the call because it was actually my fault. I did the time zones wrong. I didn't realize she was Eastern time. So that's why I thought I had a little bit more time. And so I would have been just kicking myself relentlessly if I missed that opportunity because it took me so long to get it. And so I guess long story short, I don't have these up on my wall. I know during the virtual interview, I did have some of the issues up on my backdrop of the actual old fanzine. So I still have issues 1, 2, and 3. And I guess kind of moving along this timeline, I got to a point where obviously people were not looking for physical media back then. They were looking at everything online. They're reading everything that way. They're looking at YouTube and all that. So I was just still doing interviews, doing some audio ones, and I was transcribing them to my blog. And then in 2015, did my first video interview, and that was with Doyle from the Misfits. And his solo band was coming here. And I was nervous as all get out for that. I will not lie. My friend Martine, if she's watching this, she was there with me as my assistant. And oh my gosh, that was probably the toughest interview I've done, not only because it was the first video interview, but he's very intimidating. He doesn't like to talk. They had the tour manager. They had almost everyone from the band just basically in the little bandwagon staring at me. And I'm just kind of like, oh my gosh. And so I'm like, and I'd over prepared, like I always do. I watched a ton of his other interviews from the tour. And it's like, I know what to ask him. I just have to get over the nerves. And what actually broke the ice for us was actually something he said, because I didn't quite realize how much of a football fan he is. And I'm a football fan. And this was the year, folks, where the Seattle Seahawks had lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots because they decided to throw the ball instead of run it with Marshawn Lynch. That's what he brought up. Because we were in Seattle. Okay. He was like, what the hell was Coach Carroll thinking? He said something to that effect. I'm like, oh my God, did you really just bring that up? So that's all still on the YouTube channel. If you want to go to Eclectic Arts, you can search it through YouTube. That's the very first video interview that's still on my channel. And we talked for about maybe 23 minutes. And at that time, the longest interview he had was 14. So that was kind of like, I felt good about, hey, I got him to go, I have the new record or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of snowballed from there with the music thing. The whole art side, so theater, ballet, opera, film came much later, didn't start till 2018. And again, it was really based on interviews. I wanted to interview one of the leads from Love Never Dies, which was a North American tour musical, which is the sequel to Phantom of the Opera. I didn't have any interest really in seeing the show. I'm not really a musical guy, especially back then I wasn't. But I wanted it to be really interesting to talk to one of these people. So, and this is a whole separate story, which I won't get into, but trying to get that publicist to basically say okay to me, I still have that email. And it was, I'm surprised I didn't give up on it, because she was horrible to me. And I can tell you that she was terrible. Wow. And I still know her now. We've never actually had a talk about how terrible she was to me. But I still kind of had to go back. Like, what do I want? Do I really want to do this interview? Do I want it that bad? Or do I want to, skip this one and go to the next one? And I've hung in there this long. I want this one. I want to go for it. And I'll put up with her, I'll put up with her crap basically to get this thing. And I got a yes. And I got 15 minutes. And it turned out it was the local ABC affiliate doing a piece and me. We're the only two media that were allowed there. So then I got really nervous when I saw the ABC Como van pull up, and there's a reporter that I recognize and a cameraman, and then there I am just kind of standing there by myself. This is my little kind of basic gear that I have. But I'm like, I had to work for this. I had to work for this more than they did. This is another assignment to them. And we went up there, and I can tell you this, the reporter was kind of nice to me, but she's also kind of snooty when she realized who I was. I'm a freelance media person that hadn't really done a lot of things. So she asked me to step outside while they're doing their interview, which I understand, so I don't make a bumbling error and make some noise or something in the background. I get it. But as soon as they're done, I asked her to do the exact same thing, because it's like, look, I'm a professional as well, and so I don't want you screwing up my interview. And she looked at me kind of like, how dare you say something like that to me? And I'm like, look, again, I worked hard for this thing, so I'm not going to let anything screw this up, including you. And the publicist is sitting there, and so is her assistant and a bunch of other people. And that guest was amazing. She was so wonderful to talk to and had wonderful stories. And that kind of lit this fire in me of like, I need to kind of stay with these things and keep doing this. And maybe I'll get a chance to actually go to and watch this musical, which I did. And then again, that's just snowballed into a lot of the other local theater and things around here. So the music was still going on with interviews. Now this whole other piece came along. And then, as we all know, in 2020, as you guys were just explaining, that she went to this virtual tour, and all the media people here and out everywhere in the world, really, it's like, well, what am I going to do now? Especially if you're a photographer, because you have nothing to shoot. Luckily, I write, and I'm a writer first, an interviewer first, second, whatever you want to call it, and then photography is a distant third for me. And I remember I said, well, I'll just go back old school. I'll go back to email interviews and let's kind of reach out to some people. And Tosh was one of those people. And so she was answering the questions for me. And then typically what I do is once I get answers, then I will send follow-ups to kind of make it more like a conversation. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was during those follow-up questions that Tosh was answering. Like on May 9th, I got this message through social media about, hey, Mark, what do you think about doing this this interview or thing with us on a virtual tour? We're thinking about having it be like a variety show. And I was kind of like, I wasn't in the headspace at that time. So I was initially going to think, I don't think I want to do this. Sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like,
yeah.
Yeah. And I really revere you guys. I had such an amazing experience meeting you guys in 2017. So I know how I am, that I'm going to try to set a bar pretty high, but when it came to working with you guys, I'm not going to be pushing it that much further. So I'm like, oh gosh. So I had a bunch of questions and I sent them off to Tosh. I remember she answered them and gave me like basically, Mark, you can do one day, you can do Fridays, we'll basically work with you. Whatever you want to do, we're happy to have you aboard. So basically I had no excuse. It was kind of, and thank goodness some part of me said yes to this, because I do remember we did the FaceTime in Steve's house that you guys were getting everything set up like on a Friday or whatever. And just seeing you guys in the kitchen and walking by, and I met Carl for the first time, and everything told me like, man, aren't you glad you didn't say no to this? Remember how good these people are? And that's exactly all those feelings came back to me just from that part. We hadn't done anything yet. So it became just this really a fantastic silver lining for me during the pandemic. I've always told people many times in the 285 live streams I've done now that had that opportunity from all of you not happened, I don't think I would be here doing any of these live streams that I've done, because it was so far from my mind and I'm not tech oriented at all. So I'd be like, no, I'll just do phone, I'll do in person, I'll do what I've always done. I won't go into this virtual world. And then the other part for me was definitely having the whole film thing happen, which is its own story that happened during the pandemic. So, and some of those guests that I got on for the virtual tour happened because I was reviewing a film. And then I remember Vanessa Campbell was one of those people. So I was like, how perfect is this that I'm just starting to do something brand new to me? And then I've got this medium here and I can actually bring these guests on. It was such a trip to be watching someone on my TV reviewing their film. And then, 5 days later, they're on here on Alice TV and I'm talking to them. And some of them I'm still talking to this day. I've had them back. So yeah, that's, I guess in a long nutshell or whatever, big nutshell or whatever you want to call it. That's kind of how my story started, or what Eclectic Arts is about. And again, for folks out there that are new, one, welcome. You hitched your wagon to the right band, in my opinion. And you can check me out as Eclectic Arts on YouTube. You can go to Eclectic Arts Media on Instagram. Those are the main two platforms that I'm on. And again, I'm just so grateful to Alice for giving me the opportunity back in 2020. And then also, when we met back in 2017, I think I was telling Sasha this, that my life changed for the better when I met you guys. And I truly mean that. So I went on a whole different path once I met you guys, and then doing the being in the trenches with you during the pandemic and doing 50 plus shows. It was like very much a lifeline. I know for the fans, a lot of times it was also a lifeline for them during that time. And again, for people that weren't there with us, just kind of put your headspace back to, especially like that second week of May. So we started on the 22nd of May, and then the murder of George Floyd happened, and the riots and the fires down in LA, and we had craziness up here. So here we are dealing with all of this, and then we're still doing the best we can to entertain you. I know you guys down there working out all the pancakes and all the other kind of things that are going on. It's the tech side of things. And, it was a whole process, but goodness, I mean, here we are now, and it's so great that we can flash back to 2 years ago. But at the same time, I'm even happier that I could see you in 2 weeks.
No, it's so great to have you back, Mark. I feel like that one interview turned into like every show that we did, you were there, and it became like that's part of what we do. Like Mark opens the night up, so I'm really happy that we could have this again, and this time interview you. It's like the pages are turned.
I feel like you bring this to everything, like from everything that we've gotten to create together, but you just bring this insight and like real heart. And I think that, you know, during some of the more difficult times during the pandemic, like you really brought heart to you know, to everyone. And I remember like people would talk about it afterwards where they would be like, oh, that really made me feel good to be able to like, you know, hear that interview, to hear those perspectives. So, you know, we're so grateful for that beautiful heart that you bring to what you do.
Yeah, one of the amazing things about your interviews is how much you listen, and you kind of alluded to it early in the last story that you were telling. Like how there are so many different personalities that you interview. How hard is it for you to actually take an interview in a direction? Are you trying to drive interviews, or do you just listen and go with it? You know, what's your approach there?
That's a really good question, Steve. I can tell you, as most people know, when I started the tour with all of you, I was a nervous wreck. And so my approach to the interviews was I had pages of notes, all my questions literally written down. So like, I'm like, Mark, if you get too nervous and you have a brain fart, just read the question. That's all you have to do. And it just kind of metamorphosized. But typically, like before the pandemic, when I would do in-person ones, even like with Sasha and Tosh, when we did the one up in Everett in 2017, I usually have like just points, like, you know, bullet points that I would have like either on my phone or on paper or on, you know, on a sticky note or something. And I kind of riff off of that. And so it really does come back to the listening to the guests and kind of seeing, and this is partly part of my, I think my professional background, having worked with students, having worked with at-risk youth, having worked with foster care youth, that I had to listen to them a lot and really hone that skill. And so it kind of found its way into my interviews of like, just listen to see what they have to say, because maybe they're in the best mood ever and they can't wait to talk to you about whatever they have going on. And maybe they're in a really bad mood and I have to figure out some way to kind of get them back to center. And that's really, really difficult, especially in a certain amount of time. And so to this day, I've had some other people that have messaged me about the interview style that I have and how did I develop it. And I keep telling them about, there's so many different pieces to it, but you know, in the short version, it's really figuring out how do you listen to your guest. And I know during the pandemic, that time, some of my best, maybe best isn't the right word, but some of the things that I really wish some people could have seen were the pre-show interviews talks when the guest came on, because we're tech checking like in 30 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes ahead of time, and just kind of getting a feel for them, because especially for guests that I didn't know from a hole in the wall. And they might share a different opinion than me, a different viewpoint. That definitely happened a few times. So I'm kind of like, sometimes I'd want to say something right back to them. Like, okay, wait a minute, you know, this isn't going to go well when we go live in 20 minutes. So just kind of let them say their piece and just kind of nod and just kind of like, don't necessarily agree with it, but just kind of let it go and let them get it out of their system. Because again, no one was at their best at that time. And so, but gosh, when I started doing the interviews on a regular basis with you guys and also on my own, it still comes back to this. I mean, I just did one, when did I do that? I just did it on Monday with a director, and my notes now, if I have my notebook now basically just has the intro and some of those kind of like technical things for me, but you see down here, there's nothing.
Yes, you're brave, man.
That is brave.
Well, it's brave and sometimes kind of stupid.
That makes for
but I can usually tell with certain guests ahead of time how much research I need to do. And some of them will make me really nervous, so I'll do as much research as I can. And other ones, even if I just get the vibe from their other previous interviews, like, no, there's some pretty cool, pretty laid back, pretty chill. I don't want to ever waste any guest's time. But at the same time, I think I can listen well enough and my skills are good enough that I can make the guests feel comfortable and we can have a solid interview that they'll feel good and tell the publicist that it was good and that kind of thing. Some of the best feedback I've gotten recently was from a publicist that works with 4 clients that I've had. And it's like, Mark, we've been getting such tremendous feedback from our guests about you and how you do your interviews. And we will gladly do anything with you at any time. And if the guests want to come back, because some of them do. And I'm like, oh, this is, again, that couldn't be higher praise for me that I've done the right thing, that the guests really liked what happened. Yeah, I'm just really, really grateful for those types of things. But yeah, for me personally, since I have a conversational style, it comes down to listening and trying to figure things out. And yeah, as Tosh was saying, I remember like I think it was the second interview during the Inside Out tour with Wade Murph. This is when all the craziness had gone on, and he and I were talking before we went live, and you could tell he was stressed out and I was stressed out. Like, what are we doing here? I remember that, I think it was on a Friday, because that day I had an incident in real life out here with someone giving me some crap about COVID and me being Asian and all this stuff. So I came into that room with that on my head. And then I'm trying to figure out, how do I make Wade feel comfortable and get him back to center? And then, yeah, having the countdown from Scott, we got to go live now. But I'm really glad too, because we did have a good interview with Wade, and we did. And it was good to talk about those things, because as Tosh said, everybody was feeling these different things during that time, and so instead of trying to completely ignore it, we kind of went into it. And some of the other guys, we really went into it, whether I wanted to or not. Yeah. But if it was important to them, then it became important to me, and so it was something that I wanted to address. And hopefully that's kind of that connection or that heart that people are kind of feeling when I do my interviews, that I try to treat everyone as respectfully as I possibly can. And again, I want them to leave feeling good about that they just spent their time with me. If they're watching it, if they're the guest, anything that comes down to how this whole thing happened. So I'm just really grateful for anything that's happened up to this point.
That's awesome. Yeah.
We're so grateful. Yeah, and you do. And I think that the heart shines through in your interviews, and your integrity and your kindness. It shines. So I think you're epic at what you do. And we actually have had many conversations about how your interview style is so individual to you and so beautiful. So thank you for bringing it to us, and thank you for letting us try to interview you. Please don't grade us.
Yeah, I mean, just from my own experience, I mean, I did an interview with you whenever it was, probably a year and a half ago or something, with a few other guests on the same interview. It was a group interview. And it turned out, I was very nervous about it. I'm not, a one to be front and center. And by the end, I mean, I think it went on 2 hours, a whole conversation. And by the end, we were all bonded, and I'm still friends with them on social media. And it was really a moving experience. I really, really enjoyed it. So, yeah.
Thank you, but Sasha and Steve. I mean, and I remember that was with Mike and Justin. We did the fun table session, and
I remember those. Yeah.
And I love it even more when I can just kind of become a fly on the wall and watch the guests kind of bond with each other and talk about things and start relating and all that kind of thing. And I can tell when it's working, and even when the ones are kind of so-so, they're still not bad, in my opinion.
Okay, that's a good question right there. Have there been any pancakes? Let's say pancakes. And don't use any names, but have there, or are they all somehow, find their own ways? Yeah.
Pancake interviews. Overall, besides the live stream stuff, yes, there have been not a lot, knock on wood, but I'm trying to think even during the pandemic, those interviews. Well, there is one, this was a long time ago, and as a musician that I liked. And so it was really kind of disappointing to find out what a jerk he was.
Oh.
And I always give people the benefit of the doubt. Again, you can have a bad day. I've met him more than once, and that's just the way he is in my eyes. So I'm kind of like, okay, I'm kind of done with you. I'm moving on to all the other good people like Alice, instead of spending my time over here. But during the ones doing the Inside Out tour, I mean, me just being a stickler for, again, that bar where I said things, there's definitely ones I felt fell short. Maybe other people watching it, and even for you guys, you thought, oh, that was a good one, or that was an interesting person, or whoever. But I'd be like going off camera, like, damn it, why did you do this, or why did? And I'm always critical of my work, so I'm always trying to figure that's a better way to go. But I've also learned probably in the last year that I have to back off of that some and actually try to enjoy when things are going well, because I don't. For the longest time, it was just kind of like grind, work. And yeah, that was good. Enjoy it for like 5 seconds and then move on to the next one. It's like, well, no, take it in and really enjoy this experience and then eventually move on to the next one. And it's been hard for me because, again, I'm just used to like, okay, there's this one that's done. Okay, here's the next thing. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. And but I know there's probably somebody's that was kind of
No.
But overall, off the top of my head, things that were pancake oriented were things that were not during your tour. They're things that were before, even after. So, but yeah, they shall remain nameless.
Yes.
I guess one of the questions, we were thinking about is like, it's been so interesting to watch your journey and to hear you as you talk about like facing your fears. Like you have certain things and you're just like, you have these voices that tell you to say no, and then you say yes. So I guess like the question is, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who is aspiring to do kind of what you're doing? Because you mentioned that you don't have a background in journalism, but you're still an incredible journalist, amongst many other things, So like, if somebody wants to step into this field, like what kind of advice would you give them?
That's a really good question. And yeah, I mean, if you look at things on paper, and I'm not trying to, blow myself up or anything, but certain things shouldn't have happened for me. I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have been talking to Jeff Bridges back in the day. There's certain people, because I'm not associated with a website of somebody's or a radio station or a newspaper or a magazine or anything like that. It's just strictly me. Early days, there's a couple of friends that were helping me out, but since then I've been completely solo. So it really comes down to, I think, you stay in your lane to an extent, because you have to figure out, what do you want? Like a gut check. Really, what do you want from this? And it could change in a year or two. I mean, I never thought I would be doing live streams or again, going to the opera or any of this kind of stuff. But at least at the core, what do you want? And that also kind of comes back as a reflection on you as a person. So maybe you've got some issues and things that you need to work on yourself, and that's fine. We all have them. I certainly do. But I think it's something you have to really kind of stare in the mirror a bit and kind of figure out, because if you start doing this kind of thing or in-person stuff, you're putting yourself out there. And we know in today's world, people are so quick to judge you. I mean, immediately, as soon as you have something on social media or they see something, like even right now, if they're watching this thing, it's like, who is this bald Asian guy? I mean, he's terrible. It could be anything, but you have to really know who you are as a person before you can move into, I would say, and even kind of hazard any field that you're going to be doing. But if you're going to start doing the media work, try to put in the work. I don't know how many times I told this to I've met a few new people here locally that want to, it's kind of cool that they've been following my stuff during this whole pandemic era. And then they got to see me in person in a photo pit and all that kind of thing. And so they started picking my brain about things. And I keep telling them, don't take a shortcut, put in the work. I can't tell you that enough. And so if you need a woodshed on your instrument, practice your instrument. Don't rely on something else to fix your problem. Get good at your instrument. Get good at your craft. If you're trying to be a better interviewer, then figure out and be honest with yourself. What can I do better? What went well and what didn't go so well with that? And there's something to be said for like sticking to one thing. So if you want to be a concert photographer, yeah, obviously that's great. That wasn't something for me. I like lots of different things. I'm naturally curious as a person. And I love the art. So it's kind of like, well, let's kind of venture into this world. Let's venture over here and let's kind of see what happens. Because then I can also learn something in the process. And that's always fascinating to me. But that may not be you. It might be again, you might just say, I want to get really good as a concert photographer. Okay, so go out to the local shows. Go out to something, especially in the summertime here in the US. Go to a park where they have music in the park. Go to something that's free, that doesn't cost you anything. See if it's okay if you shoot some photos. Connect with people. And that's where social media is a good tool to have, because you can find that artist from your local town and say, hey, I shot some photos of you here. What do you think of them? And that kind of thing. And then kind of start networking that way. Christiana, who was on from Paper Nova when we were doing the whole thing, she's always told me, said, I have a knack for networking. And she always wanted to know how I do it. And I was like, I don't know. I wasn't trying to be a jerk about it. I don't know. There's some part of me that wants to see people do well first. So I don't want to be, it's not the crab pot mentality of like trying to step on other people to get above everyone else. It's like, no, I want to lift you up too. So part of that to me is also seeing that they're also doing well beyond just whatever we first did. And so if you're going to be looking into doing a media outlet, how do you want to treat people? How do you want to be treated? There's all kinds of things you have to kind of play around in your head and at least get some, 80% of it together. The other 20% is going to shift and change and morph and all this other kind of thing. And then also feel, is this like your goal? Like, you want to make a living from it? Because I don't. I have a 9-to-5 job. So if you're trying to make money from it, that's a whole other ball of wax you're going to have to tackle. And it's tough out there. It's really tough out there because everyone has a smartphone. So they figure, hey, I'm a photographer. We don't need you. It's like, well, no, there's a difference. But it's not how it was, say, 20 or 30 years ago, when this was the only way to do it, by shooting on camera with a film and that kind of thing. But my long-winded rambling answer, I suppose, would be just make sure you actually get out there and do it. Do some piece of it. And again, I'm a perfect example of someone who thinks too much, who finds reasons maybe not to do something, and try a little bit of it. And if that little bit kind of gets good to you, add more to that little bit. If it gets really bad to you when you start, maybe you need to kind of step back a second. Like, oh, maybe I approached this wrong. Maybe it's not the right time in my life to start this thing. Maybe I'll start it, 6 months from now. Or maybe you're somebody who loves to collaborate with other people, so you want to do this immediately with someone else and not just yourself. So there's lots of questions you have to ask yourself. But I still think the biggest thing is just being prepared for putting yourself out there, because you can try to put up this wall as much as you want. People see right through it. I mean, they just know when you're full of crap. When you haven't done your when you haven't done your research, when you're not prepared, and it's disrespectful to everyone involved. So make sure you kind of have some sort of foundation there, and then you start building off of it. And I wish everyone every success with that, whatever your endeavor is going to be. So, and you're never too old either, because again, I started in 2011, and I was younger than I am now, but I was. So you don't have to be 22 to start something. I mean, you can start right now. If you're 50, 60, who knows? I mean, if you have an interest, then again, take a little piece of that and see what you can do with it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, it's like, you got some time left, but yeah, I had a quick question. Is there anyone that you're inspired by, like, for what you do? Like, is there a figure, an artist, or like a media person or a journalist that to you that you're like, that's what I want to do?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think, well, one of the people that I was definitely influenced by came on the tour, and his name was Tony K. And Tony he's incredibly intelligent. Anytime I see him do a panel at a convention, or definitely when I read his work, even to this day, because he just did Crypticon last month here in Seattle, and I was reading his write-up about it, and I'm like, yeah, I got a lot of work to do. I thought I was getting somewhere. It's like, no, you're not to that level yet. And he's so giving and so open about what he does. And he's kind of a benchmark for me in my head. And if I told Tony this right now, he just said, like, come on, forget about it. I'm nothing like that. But I think I mentioned during his interview and some of these other ones that I've done that the reason that I do introductions for all of my guests to this day is because of him. So every time I write out, it doesn't matter if it's 2 sentences or 2 paragraphs, it's because of Tony. And so he had a distinct influence on me. And that was back in 2012 when I first met him and saw him do his thing. And I was just like, if I ever have a reason to do an interview or, do an introduction for a guest in any kind of field, I need to do it like that guy. Because, man, he was good. And he's still good. So locally, it would be him. I know it's from the interview side of things. And I wouldn't say he's a direct influence, but I think there's something to be said for his style of what he's done. His style's definitely changed. It's Howard Stern. If you watch anything he's recently done, he's kind of gone through a lot of psychotherapy and a lot of other things. Holy moly. I mean, that guy can get down deep to guests when he wants to. Granted, his early fart man days and all that kind of stuff, he was a certain type of interviewer, but I don't think he gets enough credit for what he does because of all the shock and sex stuff that he was doing and just kind of being crazy. And I like, oh gosh, I'm forgetting his name. Ben, he's a sports interviewer, and I've watched several of his interviews. Anyway, I'm sorry, Ben, I forgot your last name, but he's a national interviewer, and he walks that line so well between being personable and being professional, and also kind of not asking the tough questions, but asking enough pointed questions to make it interesting. And I've watched him interview many, many athletes. So from the interview part, Scott, those would be the people that kind of come to mind that influenced me. If we start talking like music and all that stuff, then we'll be here forever.
Awesome, man.
Yeah,
it's 45.
Well, I mean, we
A
can
couple quick
do.
ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so,
You guys keep talking. I'm
Yeah.
gonna load up some photos while you talk.
Okay. So there's a segment on another interview show that I like watching, as well as yours, where the host brings up some photos that are kind of interesting and out of context. So we're gonna show them to you, and you're just gonna have to. We're just gonna be like, so, what's going on in this photo?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just give me one
and
second.
for people who are watching, while these are photos of Mark, we did not like send them to him or prep him at all.
No,
So
this
he,
is all.
yeah, so it's just very,
Yeah, this is all new to me.
yeah. Mwaha, ha, ha.
While Scott's getting that ready, actually out of curiosity, have you had a chance to do music yourself? Because I know that you yourself have a musical background. So I was just wondering how music is going for you.
Oh, I was just playing my guitar earlier today. And I was talking with my former singer from our duo from, that was six years ago. I think it was the last time we did anything around town just for fun. And we're kind of talking about trying to at least come together, like here in my little apartment, and just kind of plunking around and reconnecting and see what's there, because as she feels more comfortable about being out in society and all that kind of thing. And I've already been out there mixing it up with people at events. That's kind of interesting. I think both of us are kind of feeling that same pull of like, let's kind of see, because we had so much fun doing that. I mean, we never had a bad time doing our stuff ever. Whether we're just doing rehearsal here, which was, I use that term loosely because we didn't rehearse very much, but definitely doing the gigs at the breweries and the coffee shops and some of the other places that we played. And then on my own side of things, strictly for myself, there's been kind of a mixing. I talked about this, I think this was at the end of December, at the last fun table session that I did, that I've been, and I can't say too much, but I've been working on some things that kind of bringing these worlds together. So like music and potentially maybe a little bit of film and some other stuff that I have my hands in, but it'd be something strictly for my own project. So, and I don't know, you mean when this thing would see the light of day, it's very slow going. I don't have any kind of deadline set for it, but it's like, I've always had that idea in my head for many, many years of like, why don't you pull from this, and this, and kind of express yourself that way. And I think what happened to me, especially during COVID, was that even though I've been doing all this work and everything, I didn't feel like I was creating anything myself, distinctly creating something. Writing's different and photographing's different, but like something that's like completely my creation, I didn't feel like I was really doing. So I think that was starting to fuel that fire again. I'm like, well, remember that idea that you had about this character and that music thing that you did and this other stuff? And I think it's kind of time for it to start coming together, and I already have the name for it and all that kind of thing. So I don't want to say too much, because I mean, people say, well, where's that Mark? And I don't know, 10 years from now, where is it? I don't know. But the juices are flowing that way. So it's exciting for me that I'm starting to pull in that direction, which is another thing for folks that have been following me. That's why I haven't been doing as much. Between the in-person stuff and doing some live streams, I'm spending some of my energy on this other thing that's, top secret or whatever the heck you want to call it. But I'm hoping to get some piece of it out, at some point soon, just so that people can kind of get an idea of like where my head is at and where I'm going with stuff. So, and part of that's really been inspiration from all of you guys. Just again, being around creative people, it just floats my boat, and it inspires me. So it makes me want to just do my own thing and push that much harder. And then that vibe, permeates to other people, guests, other people that I talk to. And it just kind of just becomes this whole huge community, as you guys already know, because you've got a huge community around you, and you've got so many fans around you now. That's so awesome that to see the Mad Hatter group just get huge, and you got all the old guard folks and everybody else. So I guess, long story short, there will be something coming. I just don't know when.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Looking forward to hearing about it in person.
Yeah.
That's true.
I'm gonna go ahead
Awesome.
and share my screen to show
Okay.
some pictures.
All right.
That's interesting. Oh,
No.
No.
you know what? The Zoom, it's like a new installation of Zoom. So I could actually, I might be able to share it through the stream. So I'll do it through that.
We could just pull it up on this computer and turn it
Yeah.
around. Hold it like.
That's true.
Yeah.
Try it.
Okay, so first photo we've got. Which one do we want to do? Like these.
Yeah, these three down.
These three down
Yeah,
here.
one of those. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. That's gonna be the first photo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is like really, really low font. It's very low font. It's a little hard to see.
I see it.
All right. So what's going on here?
So that was from like I think the holidays from last year, and I was in such a again, I don't want to tell a whole long story, but basically I needed to move and find a full-time job within a very short period of time last year. And luckily I found the job. I'm now in this place that I like. And I think all that stuff finally started to drain out of me. So that picture was me getting ready to fall asleep before, truth be told, I was supposed to be reviewing a movie, if I remember right, when I took that picture. So that's what that is.
So, all right, what's next?
Okay.
All right, number two.
Number two.
Number two.
This is a fun game. Thanks for being cool with us just holding the picture up.
Okay.
Absolutely.
This is great.
This is how I tell my computer how to find the printer also. Hold the computer near the printer.
Yeah, we got technology. There's some technologies that we do. Some that we don't do. All right, so this one.
Oh, geez. Yeah. So that was taken at my parents' house, clearly around Christmas time. And we had just come back from my sister-in-law's birthday is like on December 6th. So we had just done, I think, her birthday dinner thing. We're back at my parents' house. And why they're touching my stomach like I'm pregnant, I don't know. It just became a funny picture, and I have no problem being, the butt of a joke or self-deprecating kind of humor. But I don't remember what led up to them touching because because you have my sister-in-law's hand on one side and you got my mom's hand on the other side.
Very like
yeah,
very iconic photo.
Yeah.
Okay, one more.
Yeah, one more for you.
Okay.
Start playing our picture game.
Yeah, no, this is fun.
That's a good one.
It's a good one.
Oh, that one he's got behind him.
Yeah.
Yeah. You already mentioned this one. But
Oh yeah, I'm so grateful to the manager, the house manager at the Edmonds Center for the Arts. So this picture with Academy Award-winning actor, I should say, Jeff Bridges, was taken in 2014 backstage before he did a concert. So a lot of people don't realize he was a musician before he was an actor. And he decided to take a break from acting and wanted to bring his band on the road and play some shows. And I had done a phone interview with him a year prior. And so I still had his publicist's contact information. So I'm like, hey, can I do an interview the day of? And she said, Mark, he doesn't do day of interviews. But I was like, well, is there any way I might be able to just meet him quickly just to thank him for doing the interview and that kind of thing? And she said, well, we'll think about it. So that became like a whole 2-month ordeal of me trying to checking in every now and then, being politely persistent like I tend to be. And like, I think it was the night before that show, she finally got back to me and said, yes, we'll work it out. Said, you can just go to Will Call and you'll get your backstage pass and you can meet Jeff before the show, before his performance. And this becomes this whole story is that when I got there, they had a ticket for me at Will Call, which I already had. I bought one because I was a fan to see the show. They didn't have anything about a backstage pass. And so I'm like, okay, here we go again. And it's just volunteers working at Will Call. So you can't get upset with them or anything. And I'm like, well, I have the tour manager's name and an email, but I don't think I have a phone number. And luckily I happened to look through my email and there was a phone number in the signature. I called it. It turned out to be his cell phone. I said, hey, I'm Mark Seguian with Eclectic Arts. There's some sort of mix up here at the Will Call. And he said, what? And he said, I'll send somebody up there right away. Don't go anywhere. And so a few minutes later, this young gal came up to Will Call and she's trying to find out what's going on. And right behind her came this guy with steam coming out of his ears. And he started going after his assistant gal. He started going after the people in the box office about this happened before and all this kind of stuff. And again, it's not their fault. I felt bad for them. And then he happened to turn his head to the left where I was standing, trying to get further and further away from him as he was getting louder. And he was like, Mark. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And he's like, hi, nice to meet you. And he turned like a complete 180 and being really nice. And, don't worry about it. We're going to work this whole thing out. And so the house manager came And she was like, well, we have sponsors that help sponsor Jeff's appearance here. So there's not time for anybody else to come backstage. And to that tour manager's credit, he said, I don't give a F about that. I have 2 people that are going back to meet Jeff, and they're going to be back there whether you like it or not. And so it's like, ooh, he got really, really uppity. Wow. And that gal was like, well, maybe if they come back with the group of sponsors we have, then we can kind of make this work out. So the people in the background of that shot are all these kind of well-to-do people that pitched money together to bring Jeff's show to Edmonds. And he talked to all of them and he's the nicest person ever on the phone and in person. Yeah. And but he was saying, hey, so has anyone had a chance to listen to my music, or have you seen a show? And no one's hands went up. My hand kept going up because I had seen him before and all this other kind of stuff. And somebody even said to him, I didn't even know you did music. And I was like, oh my gosh, really? So anyway, he took a group picture with them, and then the house manager said, and here's Mark, he did an interview with you, whatever. And that gal is the one who took my phone and took that picture while I was talking to him. And I didn't know she did it until I went and looked at my phone later. I was like, there's a picture of me standing next to him, which is this one, but that one in process. I'm so thankful that she took that picture of me actually getting a chance to talk to him just about, I don't know, whatever randomly came off of my head for 5 minutes. And my mom accompanied me to that. So she got to meet him as well. And I still remember Jeff was like, don't you want a picture together? You and your mom? I'm like, we're both looking at each other like, no, we want separate. Yeah. So that's the whole story. So I was this close to that moment not happening just because of a mix up. And thankfully, again, the tour manager, I think his name was Sven, saved the day for me. But the way he did it probably could have been done a little bit better. But still, I got what I wanted. So that's that moment. And that, I'll be honest with you, that picture and that credential on my resume really opened up a lot of doors once people saw that I interviewed him. And I think, well, if you interviewed him, then you must be okay for our guest, kind of a thing. So yeah, it was a huge turning point for me.
Awesome! What a great story!
Very cool.
Mark, thank you so much for taking the time and for being such an inspiration and a wonderful friend. We're so grateful for you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. No, thank you again. I mean, the feeling's mutual. I mean, I was so fortunate that to have seen, I think, a sponsored post on social media back in 2017, and reached out to, which eventually became Tosh, because I didn't know who I was talking to initially, and just watching that whole path and that journey of where things are. I mean, here we are in 2022, and just watching those clips, and when I was making that little video thing together, it was so fun for me to go back to there and see that stuff, and then all the stuff that happened during the 2020 period of time. And then again, here we are now. We did one of these like a year ago on my side of things with StreamYard, and then, but yeah, the big thing for me is that I finally get to see you in person on July 1st, and I have some friends coming to that show. Awesome. And yeah, I can't wait for that. It's gonna be like the mega reunion.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be so awesome. Mark.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity. Always.
Okay. You got some more soon. See you later.
We shall
right.
Yeah.
Very soon we will be playing live music.
Yeah, we'll take a little break and we'll do a little show.
All right.
gotta do a show.
Talk to you later, Mark.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.